All right, it always helps if I actually physically turn my microphone on. That is always a help. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my writing and publishing Ask Me Anything. How's everybody doing? I see a whole bunch of folks out in the chat. Oh, see, the timer's letting me know that I can start the stream now. So hello. I see Omniscience is out there, and 101 Enigma is out there. Hello, Karina, and I see Anita and Valerie. And Stephen, welcome. So glad you could join me. Thank you so much. Let's see if anybody's over on YouTube. I don't see anybody chatting on the YouTube. So, but if you're out there, hello. Glad you could join me. So how's everybody doing? What's going on? Let's get into it, right? So, I've got a couple questions, y'all. Don't let me forget. I've got 3 questions. They're all like multi-part questions, in the Facebook event. So y'all don't let me forget about those. So, what questions do you have? So while you guys are thinking up your questions, I am going to, oh, you're back in Greece, Karina. Awesome. I mean, it is what it is. It's, but 3 o'clock in the morning. Thank you for being here with me. All right. So just a little bit about me in case you don't already know this. I have been in the publishing industry since 2008. When I graduated from my MFA program. Well, back then it was an MA program, not an MFA program yet. I had to go back for the F. But when I got my master's degree, I immediately started my freelance business, and I initially signed on as initially a junior editor, but ultimately got senior editor in like a month or two. Of what was a very large and well-established ebook erotic romance publishing company, and I was with them for 10 years. And I've done contract editing with a couple other smaller presses and medium-sized presses. And I currently am an editor for a developmental editor for Falstaff. Although I haven't done a lot with them in the last year or so because my life has been so freaking chaotic. So I've been doing this for a minute. I initially had some traditional publishing bites on my novel Javaja, but I ultimately decided to indie publish it for different reasons. But that's me. So I have some background. I have a lot of background in traditional publishing. Because all the publishing companies that I've contracted with have a traditional structure. So I have a lot of background in that. I also for about 3 years I put out an anthology magazine called Fiction Veil that was ebook only, and it was a whole lot of fun. But it ended up my publishing partner ended up bailing, and so I ended up having to do it all myself, which was just way too much. I just couldn't do it by myself. So let's see. Karina's visiting kids, and Valerie. I had to go back for the F. That's exactly that's a whole bunch of us when they got accredited to confer MFAs. They gave, those of us who had an MA, they gave us kind of a deal. We didn't have to redo everything. We just had to do the pieces that were not part of our original program. And that's what we were. We were we're going back for the F. So, yeah. All right. So go ahead and drop your questions into the chat. I'll try to keep up. And if I if I miss your question, feel free to ask again. So, first question is, if you've self-published before, is there really a point for pursuing traditional publishing, or is it better to utilize that time to write more? So from my point of view, if so much depends on what your goals are, right? So probably the most effective strategy is to be a hybrid publisher, particularly if you can get with the top 5 for however many they are this week. If you can get in with a bigger publisher, that's fabulous because they have much more distribution, right? Indie authors do not have, even small publishers do not have the kind of reach that a bigger mainstream publisher has. So it is absolutely worthwhile to pursue that if you feel like something that you're writing or have written is a good fit. Because the thing about traditional publishing is they want the next big thing, but it can't be too different than the current big thing because they don't like to take risks, right? They're not interested in nurturing new and unique voices. They want it to be just different enough and just the same enough, right? So if you have something that fits with them and it's not going to slow you down to, send out, do that waiting, because traditional publishing is a long game. Like even just for one book, it takes a long time, multiple years, usually at least 2 years. So it can be a benefit to someone who's indie published in that you end up getting wider distribution, which means you have more potential readers that you can reach who, if they really enjoy your traditionally published work, then will likely go on to buy your indie published work, where you're obviously going to make a lot more money and have more control. So yes, it absolutely, there is a point to pursuing traditional publishing if it works with your business plan, your strategy for your publishing career. So hopefully that answers your question. Anita says, what is the one genre you will never write in? Military sci-fi. I cannot think that I would ever write in military sci-fi. I don't like sci-fi. I mean, I don't dislike sci-fi, but I don't read in sci-fi anyway. And probably the many of the views I have may not really jive with a lot of the military sci-fi audience. I think there is a small portion of the audience it might jive with, but it's not really my cup of tea. I don't love it. So that's the answer to that. Karina says, do you turn away editing work because of the genre of fiction? Yes. If they come to me with military sci-fi, really any sci-fi that is like, I can do soft sci-fi and I can do space opera, but if it's hard sci-fi or if it's military sci-fi or any of the, like, because I'm not going to do a good job. I mean, I'll do a good job with the words, but I don't have any concept of reader expectations in that genre. And it would really be a disservice to the potential client if I took that work. I mean, if it's a short piece, if it's short fiction, I might. I mean, I'll tell them. I'll absolutely leave it up to them. But I am not going to spend the time to work on a novel in a genre that I don't have enough background in to effectively serve the client. So yes, I will say no to things because of the genre of fiction. Now, there are not a lot of genres I would say no to, because I've edited in many genres. And I read, like I love thrillers and mysteries. I don't do cozy mysteries so much. I like them, but I like them in doses, right? So like I've read all that, like I'm into that. I love murder mysteries. I love police procedurals. I love that kind of stuff. But I also read urban fantasy, and I've read high fantasy. I don't read a lot of high fantasy anymore. I tend to like urban fantasy best because I like the idea that there might be magic in our world. And I've like the publisher I worked with for 10 years, it was erotic romance. So I can do romance. I generally won't do inspirational because I do not believe the way that author probably believes, and I could potentially do a disservice. So yeah, there are a lot of genres that I can edit in, and there's a small amount that I don't feel qualified to edit in, and I'm not going to take a client and and just for their money. It's not about, I mean, it's partially about the money for me, but it's not all about the money. I'm gonna check over on YouTube, see if we got anything from anybody over there. I don't think anybody has chimed in. I know there's at least one or two people watching, but all right. Valerie says, oh, 5. Talking about the traditional publishers. 5. Suddenly lights go out, then flicker back out on. 4. Yeah, that's pretty much how it works. Yes, that's what I mean by hybrid. Karina says exactly. They don't want to take a chance on something new. Traditional publishing, best-selling genre books will always get the step up. Very unfair, but yeah, it's really a change that has happened since the publishing houses have been bought out by big corporations. That is really when it stopped being as author friendly. It used to be they would really look for someone who they could nurture, even if their skill wasn't where it needed to be. They would teach. I mean, part of it was the editor's job is, like any editor's job, is teaching the writer, and helping the writer become better, like move towards the best writer that they can be. Except the corporations, it's all about bottom line. It's all about money. It's capitalism, right? So there's not as much opportunity for the editors to do what they actually really love to do, and that is nurture newer writers. So, and obviously not every editor, but many editors, that is what they like to do. Stephen says, I'm self-publishing, but I'd like to start developing an Audible, so audiobooks. Would you recommend doing this? Based on my research, the answer is yes. If you're self-publishing, then yes, you should do an audiobook, 100%. She says that she doesn't have any audiobooks yet, but that's really more of a question of how many spoons I have, which is not many. So yes, absolutely, do audiobooks. Now, whether you narrate them yourself, if you have that skill, or whether you hire an independent narrator, or whether you go through the ACX marketplace, all of that is just going to depend on your skills and your goals. So Karina says, would you take on nonfiction editing work, or do you just work with fiction? I would take on nonfiction if it was something that was interesting to me and I felt like I could help the author. Because if it's something that's supposed to be like dry, like a textbook, probably not. But if it's something like that is supposed, like if it's a self-help book, if it's a book about writing, if it's a book about a topic that I find interesting, I would do it, sure. Because most of those books, they often want like a conversational tone, or they don't want to come across as too stuffy and stuff. And, it's very much like it's very much creative nonfiction at that point, So yeah, it would depend on the project. I'm pretty picky now anyway. Just even with my fiction clients, because I've cut down drastically on how much freelance editing I do. There's the little guy. Okay. Sorry. So yeah, it would really depend on the subject matter and also the author. That's really what I'm selective about. I'm very selective with what authors I work with, because I want authors who are going to be, they're focused on their work. I mean, obviously we all have our issues. I've been completely unfocused for like 3 years now. So, not that, but like who are serious about what they're doing. So yeah, and that's for fiction or nonfiction. It doesn't even matter. How quick do you know a manuscript is bad enough you can't get through it? How do you handle that with the author? Well, I have never had that issue with freelance clients. I have had that issue with contract, like working with publishers sometimes. Like I've had a situation where I've gotten a book and it really wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't horrible or anything like that. There are very few books that are so bad that you can't salvage anything from them. Like that's the idea that, oh my God, this is so terrible, nobody will ever want to read this ever. That's just not a thing. That's a thing that I think we as writers sometimes think, but it's not true. There are very few manuscripts that are just so bad they're not salvageable. So for me, I mean, we all have varying levels. Like, the writer I am now is much better than the writer I was 10 years ago. And that writer was much better than the writer I was 10 years before that. And so, if the author is serious, if they really want to make this something that is an important part of their life, whether it's they wanted to make their full-time job or whatever, what I do is, like, one of the things I offer is a new author consult, and it is significantly less expensive than a full edit, because a full edit can easily cost $1,200, $1,500 for like a full-size book. You know, obviously not a short story, but one thing that I offer, because when I read the sample, because I request a specific page range that's like the middle of the book, because I don't want to sample the beginning, because the beginning's been polished a bajillion times. I want to see what I'm actually working with. And so when I look at that, I can usually tell whether they're ready for a developmental edit or not. So often newer writers are not, because, and the way I look at that, it's not that, oh, it's so bad. It's that there are many, many novice mistakes. You know, we all went through that time, right? Like, it's not a judgment at all. It's just, if they're going to pay me $1,200, $1,500 to do their work, they don't want me futzing around with the easy stuff. You know, they don't, like, that's a waste of their money if I have to just focus on the easy stuff that, you know, a beta reader, a critique partner, another writer could find, right? They're paying me for my expertise beyond that. And so it does them a disservice, and me, it wastes my time too, right? So when I offer the new author consult, it is, I read the manuscript, I make my own notes, we get on a Zoom call, hour, half an hour, hour and a half, however long, and I go over my notes and I give them feedback on how to improve their manuscript. And so if they then, you know, they can take that, I can record it and give them the recording of the video and everything, all that mess. And then if they then decide to come and engage me for a full edit, if they come back within, I think it's 60 days, and they've done their revisions based on my feedback, and they come back, then they get, the new author consult is $1 a page, which is way cheaper than a full developmental edit, which runs between $5 and $9 a page. So if they then come back after they've revised, I will knock $1 a page off. Plus, they're going to get a better rate because it's going to be in better condition, right? Because they've already tackled probably most of the stuff that I've tossed out there. So there's not really. I don't say, oh, your manuscript sucks, so I'm not going to work with you. You know, if they're serious and they really want to get better, number one, they're going to be okay with hearing that their manuscript sucks. I'm not going to say that. I'm never going to say that. I am going to say it needs a lot of work or something like that, because it's like the chances of it actually sucking are low, right? It's just that they don't necessarily have the skill level to pull off the vision they have for this story. So, okay, so that's that. So hopefully all of that talk answered your question. So Stephen says he's going to hire someone for the audiobook, so that's awesome. Oh, Karina may have a project for me. Excellent, excellent. All right, so that seems like, let me check. I'm not seeing any chat. Wait, hang on. Let me fix this. Live chat is what I want to see. YouTube is giving me all these notices. Okay, it doesn't look like anybody said anything in the YouTube chat. So if I missed anybody's question, please be sure to repeat it. I'm going to pop over to the event page where we have 3 questions. All right. First question is, when querying, if you have a series planned, should you state that in your query? Or should you say something like, with series potential? So it used to be that you always said, this is a standalone novel with series potential. There's been a bit of a shift in the last 5 or 10 years, 5 or 8 years maybe. And that's not like, if you said I have a series back then, if you said I have a series, they'd be like, nope, because I can't commit to that. But things have changed a lot, and part of this is indie authors. Series are what you want, right? You want a series because that's where your money's going to be. And it feels like traditional publishing is like, oh yeah, series are a great idea then. So it's not as much of a stigma, right? It's not as much of a stigma as it was. Y'all let me know. So I don't have control necessarily over when ads are going to run. If an ad starts running on Twitch, please let me know in the chat so that I can stop talking for a second while it runs. So what was I talking about? I was talking about, series. All right. So, yeah, so the series, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat, y'all. So, so it used to be that you didn't tell them that you had a series planned. You just told them it's a standalone with series potential. But now I don't think that's as much of a stigma. I don't think it matters as much. It is very important that first book can stand by itself, though. That's really important, because if they think that they have to buy a series, if they think that they their option is either I have to buy multiple books or I'm not going to buy it at all, they're going to lean towards not buying it at all. So I would probably still stick with it's a standalone with series potential. Or you could say it's a standalone, but I am planning to create a series. I have the first 3 books, like the first book is finished, the next 2 books are outlined or whatever. I would not say past 3 books. I wouldn't talk about if I had, it's not a 7-book series. I have the first, the next 2 books outlined, and I'm working on the first draft of the second book. And so that way they're not going to be overwhelmed by the idea that you've got 7 books that you want to sell them. So I would probably still go with it is a standalone, and either it has series potential or I have the next 2 books outlined and I'm working on the second book now. So that is what I would advise with that. The second question is, if you state it as a series, should you have the entire thing written already? No, you don't have to. Or at least part of the second book and plans for the third. So going back to what I said, yes, if you at least sketch out the next couple books, just broad sketches. You don't have to outline it, beat by beat. But if you're doing that, all right, so here's what I would advise. If you have a series that you really want to write this as a series, you don't want it just to be a standalone book, you really want it to be a series, freaking write it, If you want to be traditionally published, if that's your ideal, then you can be shopping that first book around while you're working on the second one. Here's the thing. If you're going to indie publish, if you decide that it's just taking too long with traditional publishing, whatever, you're going to want to have the first 2 books at least done already before you publish. That's going to be your 3 if you can. That's going to be really your strongest launch, is going to be if you have 2 or 3 books complete and ready to go. You don't launch them all at the same time. You launch them about a month apart. But having them done, having those done before you start, before you publish the first one, having at least 3 of them done is going to be a really good position to be in. But if you're also interested in traditionally publishing, then shop that first book around while you're writing the other 2, right? It doesn't hurt. It literally does not hurt you to do that. So that would be my guidance on that. Valerie says, I had a friend who sold a trilogy, except the contract said 3 books, not a trilogy. The publisher ended up asking for a duology and a separate standalone. There were ads. Did everybody else get ads too? Did y'all hear me? Y'all let me know. Um, Let me know if I'm back. Do, 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 do. Oh, yeah. Valerie, thank you so much for transcribing what I was saying. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Valerie's awesome. Um, oh, you had the pop out. That's very clever. All right. So Valerie said, I had a friend who sold a trilogy, except the contract said 3 books, not a trilogy. That means they sold 3 books, not a trilogy. Publisher ended up asking for a duology and a separate standalone. Yeah. And that can be, disappointing. That actually really speaks to being sure that you understand your contract. We actually talked about this a lot in the last Zoom discussion last night for that we did in the Writing Tribe. We talked about how it's really important for you to read and actually understand your contract. So we were specifically talking about short stories, but it's the same. You should always, and if you don't understand it, then you reach out to someone who does and ask them if they will look over it for you. And being in the community that we're in, the community of writers, there are lots of writers who have more experience who would be happy to help out a newer writer who's looking at their very first contract. Because the other thing is, we get so excited when somebody, like, we get the validation, right? It's validation when we get a contract for our writing, whether it's a short story, a novella, a novel, a trilogy, series, whatever. It is such validation to just get that you can sometimes not have your own best interests in mind. You just really want it so bad that you don't notice red flags that you should notice, right? So it doesn't ever hurt to have another set of eyes on your contract. Because if, like, now that your friend knows to check the actual phrasing, and if it says 3 books, okay, well, that is not necessarily a trilogy. It can be assumed to be a trilogy, but that's not what the words say. It says 3 books. And, well, technically, though, if they had a duology, okay, so a duology rather than a trilogy and then a separate standalone. So that's still 3 books, right? May not be what your friend was looking for, but, So now your friend knows to really watch for those very specific things. And the other thing that I want to mention is that a contract, when you receive a contract, that is opening negotiations. That is not, you must sign this exactly as it is, and that's it. You can ask for anything you want to be changed in the contract. Whether they're willing to give you that or not, that depends. But you also need to be willing to walk away if what they're offering you is something that doesn't work for you, honestly. So let's see, what else? Valerie says, yeah, and also she won't write a book too far in advance. It may never see the light. You mean like, what do you mean? She won't write like a series ahead, or I'm not sure I understand what you mean. I'm going to pop back over. There were no more questions currently, so I'm going to pop back over to the questions. And this is the last question. Excuse me. This is the last question that we have that I see in the event. As a series, is it bad to end a book on a cliffhanger? If part of the conflict from the first book is resolved, but there's a cliffhanger for setting up the second book. So it really depends on how you define a cliffhanger. So I'm going to answer a little differently. So when you sit down to write your book, there is a story question, Fellowship of the Ring. Will Sam and Frodo get the ring to Mordor, right? That's the story question, and save the world, right? That's the story question. Your story question 100% needs to be answered in a satisfying way by the end of that first book. Now, if there's other stuff happening that doesn't get resolved in that book but is not directly related to the story question, for that book, then those can be those loose ends can be left untied as, your cliffhanger to get them to the second book, right? Absolutely cool. But that you do not end your first book without answering your story question in a satisfying way for your reader, because that's not cool. So hopefully that answers the question. So Valerie says she had written the whole trilogy and had to combine books 2 and 3. Hugely frustrating for her. That makes total sense. I mean, I totally get being frustrated by it. But also, I mean, she could have pushed back on that. She could have said, I don't want to write a standalone. I want to write these 3 books. Although if books 2 and 3 did not stand alone well, or if book 2, it really would have been book 2. If it didn't stand alone well, that's a different thing. Because like for me, I've talked about this in some of the discussions we've had. The Hunger Games trilogy, that middle book is not a standalone book. Like, I mean, it doesn't need to be standalone, but it's not even a book. It's not even a novel. It's really a bridge between books 1 and 2. I mean, 1 and 3. And like, I've been told that originally book 2 was actually part of book 3, and it was book 2, if that makes sense. And that the publisher made her split it up. And that happens too, right? But for my own, if I feel like I can't answer the story question for that book, that second book, then that's a problem, right? Because when I read those books, when I read The Hunger Games, I was super annoyed when I got to the end of the second book. Because I don't even remember it now because it was 15 years ago now. But like, I got to the end of that book and I was like, really? Really? I was very annoyed. So yeah. So that goes back again to the story questions, right? What are some common formatting mistakes you see between professionally published books versus indie? Well, the indie authors that I read tend to be pretty high level, like meaning they're very professional and their formatting is done professionally. But I think as far as formatting, I think sometimes particularly newer indie authors may try to be clever or cute with their formatting. Like they'll use a non-standard script sometimes, and that's, I don't like that so much. Only because it can make it very difficult to, read, right? Like if it's hard to see, if it's hard to focus on, if it's hard to follow with your eyes, then it can make reading more challenging. Some people have enough challenges around reading, if they've got like maybe a reading, like dyslexia or something like that. They don't need extra barriers. So I sometimes see that. I don't see a whole lot of difference. What I do see, and I can't even really say that the editing quality is particularly worse for indies. I mean, definitely for some indies who are not doing enough to learn their craft and are not getting enough good critique and or are not paying for a professional editor, certainly there can be problems. That's probably much more common than formatting differences. Is quality of the writing differences, but that is not just isolated to indie authors. There are books, and there are some very successful books where I read them and I'm like, you guys should have hired me to edit this because this is a hot mess. I don't know why people don't see it's a hot mess, but it's a hot mess. I'm not obviously going to name any names, but it's not it's just there can be problems, right? There can be not enough eyes on something, or some of the people that should have been listened to weren't listened to. That happens too. Because again, especially in traditional publishing, the big 5 or 4 or 3 or 8, they're not 8. You know, the bottom line is the money. The bottom line isn't the book. So if they can put out a piece of crap, I mean, relatively speaking, and still make a boatload of money on it, they don't care. Not the editors, let me be clear, but the corporation. So, all right. Oh, Karina says, I love cliffhangers as long as the second book is already out. What's the indie pub checklist? Obviously, you need a cover and editing, but what do you recommend and what order would you put them? That's a really good question. All right. So, obviously, finish the book. Go through it as many times as you can to make it as good as you feel you can make it. And that is on a broad scale. I'm not talking about like tweaking the words here and rewriting one sentence there. Those are nitpicky things, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about making sure that your story arc works, making sure that all of your subplots that you intend to wrap up in this book are properly wrapped up and not just left hanging. Make sure that your character arcs are where you want them to be, and then make sure the prose flows as well as you can make it. Then send it out to other writers who are your critique partners. Ask in your writer groups, hey, I have this X-length Y genre novel that I'd really love a critique on. If anybody has the time to do that, I'm happy to critique yours in return, right? So you get your critique, right? So, so while you're doing all that, you should be thinking about your cover, and you should be looking for a cover artist, figuring out how that's going to work. Engaging your cover artist, because they also have a schedule, right? They have stuff that they're working on. So they may not be able to work on your stuff for 3 months, right? At the same time, start looking around for a professional editor if you don't already have one that you're going to work with. Find out what their schedule is. Find out what you need to do to hold a place. Think about when you might be sending them. Okay, so this is all around when your critique partners are reading your book. Or it can be after you got that back, somewhere in there. You get it back from your critique partners, you revise it, based on what you think that, like, the useful feedback that you've gotten from them. Don't necessarily change everything they say. If you've got 2 critique partners or 3 critique partners, if more than one has said the same thing, then you need to really look at it. But really think about each comment they make. Really think about it. Don't knee jerk about, oh, they're wrong. Really think about it and think about whether it would improve your story, right? Okay, so you do your critiques, you do your critique revisions. Maybe you send it out to beta readers at that point. I'm trying to think of how I usually, because I don't actually engage a full developmental editor. I engage a copywriter. So somewhere in there, you're going to engage your editor. You're going to send your book to your editor. They're going to send it back. You're going to revise it again based on their feedback. I usually do beta readers before I send it out to my copy editor because I want all the feedback I can get before. So once I do the revisions, send it to, so if you're doing a developmental editor, you do your revisions. If you can get a proofer, if you can afford to get either a copy editor or a proofer, the proofer is really just going to be like, commas go here, and this should be an em dash instead of a comma or whatever. So then send it off to them. By that point, you should have your cover back, right? And then you should have figured out your formatting. If you're sending it out for formatting, you want to have gotten on your formatter schedule probably about when you were starting to work on your edits from your editor, right? Your revisions that you're doing from your editor's feedback. So if you're going to get it professionally formatted after you're done with your revision, send it to the formatter, they format the book, you take the cover, and then you upload it. So that's kind of it, right? I think I got everything. Let me know if I missed anything. What is a checklist for a marketing plan? Whew, that's a big one, Stephen. That's hard because there are so many different ways to do marketing, and so much of it depends on your genre, who you are as a person, like what connections you have to what communities, and what you're comfortable doing, right? So there is no, I mean, honestly, if there were a hard and fast marketing plan, we'd all be making lots of money. But that's not how it works. So you've got you've got your book launch marketing, and then you've got your long-term, your evergreen marketing, right? So like your best sales are always going to be, I shouldn't say always. Everything being equal, your best sales are almost always going to be the first month of your release. The first couple of weeks are going to be your best. And then after that, it really comes down to you doing things to just, you're going to have this big, crest, and then it's going to come down, and then it's going to come down a lot, but then it's not going to bottom out, but then it'll start going like this. And your goal is to make sure that this doesn't go like that, but instead goes like this, right? Does that make sense? So I don't know that I can give you a whole lot of guidance on exactly how to market. I will say you should have your own website for sure. Whether you sell your products on your website directly is a personal choice. I would recommend it. If you are not doing KDP Select, which is Amazon's exclusive contract where you can't distribute your ebook anywhere but on Amazon, and that's how you get into Kindle Unlimited, right? If you're not part of that, if you're not part of KDP Select, then you can sell your ebooks on your website, which you're going to make a lot more money on than selling them through Amazon. But again, then you have the issue of getting people to your website. But either way, you need to have a website. Whether you're selling things directly on the website or not is completely your call. You also want to have a newsletter. And you want to have a newsletter, because you can have 10,000 followers on Facebook or Twitter, or X, whatever the fuck he's calling it now. You can have 10,000 followers on Instagram, wherever, on Twitch, wherever. But those are not your people. They are your people, but you do not have direct access to them. You only have access through that, fucking ad. Okay, so obviously you heard me say X. So, man, I wonder if I can turn the ads off for this stream. Let me see if I can turn the ads off because this is annoying. I keep meaning to do an ad, like do it myself so that then it will pause the automatic ones, but then I keep forgetting. So let me look and see if I can turn that off for right now. I don't know if I can. I probably can't. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just looking real quick. Yeah, it's not going to let me do it midstream. Oh, let me pause that. But we got 20 minutes. Maybe if I put this up a little bit, I'll be able to see it. Okay, so I've got it to where I can see the timer for it. All right. Okay, so what I was saying... was that you can have all these followers wherever, but you don't have direct access to those people. Your access to them is through the platform. So if the platform changes, if anybody who was around like 6 or 7 years ago on Facebook, when you had your author page, they used to be called fan pages, but now they're just called pages. But if you had your author page and somebody followed you, they would see your content in their timeline. This was maybe probably 10 years ago at this point. But then the algorithm changed because Facebook wasn't making any money, so they needed income. So in order to see your posts now, in most cases, you as the creator have to spend money to boost them, right? So you can't just reach out to your Facebook followers and talk to them. That's not how it works. So that's why you need a newsletter, right? You need a newsletter so that you can reach out and talk to them directly. So you want a website as far as marketing, you want a newsletter as far as marketing, and you want 1 or 2 social media accounts, social media platforms that you enjoy using. Don't try to get on every platform. I mean, grab your name on every platform because you never know when you decide you want to try something different. So grab your author name on every platform, but every platform except Threads. But don't try to do every social media because you just can't. And if it's something that you don't find interesting, if it's something you hate doing, I love the concept of Instagram. I just forget to take pictures of shit. So like being on Instagram, like I try, but I'm not very good at it. So I tend to do better with video, I find. So like I do Twitch, right? I do a lot of Twitch, and then I was doing Twitter. I'm still doing Twitter, but I'm not engaging on Twitter anymore because it is just so gross. I just can't do it anymore. I just don't even want to be there. So, I haven't worked out where else I'm going to go. I'm kind of really sort of mostly focusing on Twitch. I don't have a lot of extra energy to put into a bunch of social media anyway. But anyway, so you need a website, you need a newsletter, and with the newsletter, make sure that you're sending out, don't send out like every other day. But you need to make sure you're sending out newsletters regularly. It doesn't have to be once a week. I send mine out at least once a month. Usually, I used to be doing about every 3 weeks is when I send mine out. So I used to do it about every 10 days, but then I got overwhelmed with life. And so now it's like basically once a month, sometimes twice a month. But you need to make sure that you're engaging with your people. There's a great little book. It's a tiny little book. I don't think I have it here. I think it's at my actual home. But it's called Newsletter Ninja by Tammy Labrecque. And just do a search on, wherever you buy your books, and just search Newsletter Ninja. You'll find it. There's 2 volumes, 1 and 2. Definitely one has great information. I think the second one is more about your reader magnet, I think. I'm not positive. So you definitely need those things. What else? And if you like conventions, do conventions. I probably make more money in conventions. In the months I have a convention, I make more money at those than I do in my online sales. So, yeah. All right. So hopefully that at least gives you a little bit of a basics about marketing. I can't give you a marketing plan. I just can't do it. So Nick, okay, over on YouTube, Nick says, apparently my ad blocker is nuking them, so I'm not seeing any on the YouTube stream. You're not seeing any what, Nick? Because I'm not seeing, maybe I missed, hang on, let me see if I missed. Nope. Yeah. So I think I might have missed if you said something earlier. So tell me what your ad block, what you missed. Tell me what you missed. You're welcome, Stephen. Let's see. Threads shakes fists. I'm done with Twitter. Twitter is a dump and run ground and toxic. Valerie says, X, the site formerly known as Twitter. You want to know what's really funny? My husband just sent me a thing. Apparently, X is trademarked by Facebook. The other thing, you want to hear another funny thing? Apparently, Elon Musk wanted to take Twitter off of the building. Like, you know, the building is labeled Twitter. He wanted to take it down to put up X, except he didn't get approval from the county or the city, from the city. And so the cops shut him down. So now it says Itter. It's just Itter. I wish they would have started taking off from the back so it was just Twit. That would have been funnier. So, all right. The Real Salties is here. Hello, I haven't seen you in a long time. Good to have you here. We're doing an Ask Me Anything. And I think I've gone through all the questions that were, let me double check and make sure I went through all the questions that were in the Facebook event. Come on, refresh. Let's go. Yeah, I think that's all of them. So, all right. So if any of y'all have questions, we can do some more. Can you talk about the best way to use pseudonyms? Well, yes. Yes, I can. All right. So first, when you're creating a pseudonym, you need to think about, the first thing you need to think about is what's the point? Like, why are you doing this? Is it privacy? Is it because you're writing in two different genres that can be problematic? Like, if you're writing erotic fiction and you're also writing kids' books, you obviously do not want to cross-pollinate those, right? So, so you would definitely want a pseudonym for one or the other, or both. So you need to think about that. And then choose your pseudonym, and then you don't necessarily have to say it's a pseudonym, but please, 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 for the love of everything in the universe that is good and happy, please do not pretend, like, please do not make a whole huge persona that is someone not you, and then engage with people personally, one-on-one, as that person, without telling them that, no, this is a pen name and I am really this other person, right? You don't necessarily have to share your other name, but like, I'm a white woman. I'm not going to write as a black woman. Like, I may I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to then engage with other writers or readers and say that I am a black woman. I'm not going to do that. You shouldn't do that either. So don't do that. You know, have a pseudonym, let the pseudonym live its life. You are not really involved. You just write in the books. So, I would recommend, while we're talking about pseudonyms, if you are female presenting and you are either a homeowner or you hope to own a home sometime in your life, I would recommend, if you haven't published yet, publishing under a pseudonym, publishing under a pen name. Because especially, okay, if you have like just a very, very common name like Sally Smith, that's probably not a problem. My name is Vanessa Junta. It is weirdly spelled. Both the first name and the last name are weirdly spelled. You find this on the internet, you have found me, right? There may be one other. I know there are a couple actual Vanessa Juntas, but with VA. Maybe there's one other that's spelled weird, like me. But if you find that name on the internet anywhere, it's probably me. If you don't know this, public, like your house, when you purchase a house, that is public record. So people can go to the assessor's office. Like, if somebody wanted to find me, well, they wouldn't be able to find me right now because I'm not living at my house, but they could find my house. They know, like, I live in Atlanta. There are like, oh, thank you for the follow. There are like 6 counties around, like, I'm like, right, let me scoot over. There we go. There are like 6 counties in sort of the metro area, and then probably another half dozen around. You just you just search in the assessor's office for my name, even just my last name. You're going to find my house. You're going to find my address. So as a female presenting author, if you have not published yet, I would recommend that you publish under a pen name for that reason. All right. Let me scroll back up and see what people have said. Can I look at the story you're making just to see how it is and see if someone would write it? Are you writing it? Aren't you writing it? If you're not writing it, then it's just an idea, and you could hire someone to write it for you. Almost any idea can make a sentence. If someone would read it. Well, somebody would read it. 100%. Like almost anything that can be put out there is 100%. But if you want to engage me as, in my editorial role, then you're absolutely welcome to send me a message. Send it to me. Are we on Facebook? I don't think we're on Facebook together. You can send me a whisper here, and I'll give you my email address. So I can do an assessment like that. I mean, is it just an idea? If it's just an idea, I'm just going to tell you right now, yes, someone will read it. Because ideas are not, they're not books, right? One of the things that you'll probably hear well-published and very successful authors, when they're giving interviews, a lot of people will ask them, like what's something annoying, like that people say to them or whatever. And invariably, one of the answers is almost always, well, somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I have this idea, I'll give it to you and you can write it and then we'll split the profits. And it's like, no, that's not how it works, right? Because ideas for most authors are a dime a dozen. And somebody will read almost any idea. Somebody will read it. But it really comes down to how you write it, right? Because I can write a story about 2 siblings who are at war over a kingdom, right? That could be fantasy. That could be science fiction. That could be murder mystery. That could be historical fiction. It could be anything with that idea, right? So much of it depends on the actual execution of the idea. That's what makes readers that's what makes reader bases, is how something's written. CJ says, how do you do taxes as an author? I mean, you become a business when you publish, right? So do you create a business name or a pub name or what? I assume your accountant just files it as a small business. So I have an accountant. I've actually had her for about 10 years. So I had her particularly when I started editing, because that was just all very complicated and I didn't want to deal with it. So there's lots of advice about this online. So really, so much, again, it's very subjective. It's what you want to do. If you're just indie publishing, you're only publishing your own work. You are a sole proprietor as soon as you start doing that. You don't have to file anything. You are just a sole proprietor. You're going to do everything under your social security number, and you don't have to worry about anything. If you are going to create a publishing house, even if initially it's just for your books, you can also do that as a sole proprietor. If you start publishing other people's books, then you're probably going to want to shift over and become an LLC. And obviously I'm just talking about the United States. I can't speak to other countries because I don't know their laws. I don't even know our laws all that great. But you're going to want to, okay, that's so weird. But you're going to want to, okay, hang on. I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep up. Ads. Okay, Nick, I'm sorry. For some reason, my YouTube chat was not working as well as I was hoping. So I keep missing things and it keeps not refreshing properly and stuff. So you may not be getting the ads on YouTube because they're Twitch. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works. I don't think you get the ads because I think it's venue specific. So it's just Twitch. Sorry, Twitch people. So anyway, so taxes. So if you're going to start publishing other authors, you're probably going to want to shift over to an LLC or something like that. But I absolutely recommend talking to a tax professional or a business attorney about those things. I can't really speak to that, but you can just do it the sole proprietorship. Now, when you file taxes, you're going to have to, like, there's forms that you're going to have to, fill out along with your tax return. You can't do the 1040 easy anymore. You're going to have to do the regular 1040. So you can do it separately as a business. Like once you incorporate, become an LLC, or if you do one of the other corporate types, then you may have to file separately. I actually have an LLC from when I was doing the magazine. When I was actively doing the magazine, I had two separate returns. My personal return that's joint with my husband, and then I had the LLC return. When I stopped publishing the magazine, we moved the business return under my personal return. So we file a Schedule C for that and everything. So anyway, there it is. Hello to Allie Rabbit. Good to see you. It's okay that you did all caps. I like the hello in all caps. That makes me happy. Let's see. Oh, thank you so much for the follow. Huzzah. Real Salty said it's just a short read to see if I'm going anywhere good with it. I can't tell where you're going with it. I mean, you absolutely send me a message, send me a whisper here, and I'll give you my email address and we can talk over email about it. I mean, I'm happy to help out. There's also, if you join the Writing Tribe on Facebook or our Discord, we actually have a group. We do lots of discussions and we do things like brainstorming or read a part of your work. We also have a critique group that runs every other week where you can upload, like, I don't know how long it is, like 10 pages or something like that. And other authors will critique your work and you'll critique their work. So we have a lot of options for that in the Writing Tribe. You can see down there, group on Facebook, it's group/the Writing Tribe. That's going to change. But for now, that's what it is. Oh, bye, Valerie. Thank you. Let's see. CJ says ideas are easy. The writing it is the hard and fun part. Yes, that ideas aren't actually always easy for everyone. And I used to think I was super weird and maybe not a real writer because I don't get ideas all the time. Like I've always heard other authors being like, oh my God, I got 40 ideas when I went to the doctor's office, and I'm just like, how does that work? I don't. I get like I've had like 3 original ideas and everything else I steal from other people. So I say that tongue in cheek, but it's partially true. But I was actually at Dragon Con a couple years ago, and it was only a couple years ago. It was either 2021. I think it was 2021. It might have been 2019. It was 2019 or 2021. So it wasn't that long ago. And I am second to the director for the writer's track. So I'm basically the assistant director. So I'm I'm in our room and stuff. And we actually have a few big panels that we go to the ballroom for. We leave our room and go to a ballroom because they're really big names. And we had one that had Laurel K. Hamilton, and I don't remember who all was on it, but I remember Patricia Briggs was on it. Patty was on it. And she was up there. And the question was, who do you run your idea, like who do you bounce your ideas off of, or, if you have an alpha, who is your alpha reader, who's the person you brainstorm with? And, people are, they get to Patty and Patty's like, nobody. She said, I don't talk to anybody about it, which, everybody was like, oh, well, that's different. And what she said was, and just bless her for this, she said, I don't get a lot of ideas. She's like, I'm not one of those authors that gets 5 ideas on the way to the grocery store and 10 ideas on the way back. She said, that's not me. She said, when I have an idea, I guard it. She said, because I don't get them often, so I need to hold it very, very tightly. And so like that made me feel so good. So if you're an author out there and you're not the type who gets ideas every time you like pick your nose, I would pick my nose a lot, honest to God, if I could get an idea every time. But if you don't, then, you know, you're not alone. I'm with you. So yeah. All right. So Ali says, I don't know if Rose has asked it yet, but my debut novel, I want to get traditionally published, but all of my concepts are set up to be trilogies. There was a conversation happening in a Discord I was in saying publishers won't pick that up unless my first can stand alone. Okay, I did cover this earlier, but I'll briefly, so go back and rewatch it for the more detailed answer. But briefly, it needs to stand alone, but that doesn't mean it can't be the first book of a trilogy. It just needs to be able to stand alone. It's iffy now. Like whether it used to be that if you had a book and you queried a book and you said it was the first book of a trilogy, that was almost always an automatic no. It's not quite like that anymore. It's not that severe anymore. But your first book has to be able to, it can't need the second book in order to be fulfilling. Because if your readers are not fulfilled in your first book, they're not going to go to your second book. You know, if they don't, when they get to the end of that book, if they're not being like, okay, great. You know, this is awesome. I loved it. Or, you know, if you leave it on like this big cliffhanger where you did not resolve the story question for that book, they are not going to read your next book. They just won't. So it has to be standalone enough. It's okay if, you know, there are other stories that are related that you can tell later, or other parts of a story that you can tell later, but it has to be fulfilling in and of itself. But definitely go back and rewatch. It'll be up on YouTube. It'll be on Twitch for a couple weeks, however long they keep the VODs, but it'll be up on YouTube forever. Nick, how can I find the Discord? If you go into the Facebook group, because I know you're in the Facebook group, go into the Facebook group, any of the welcome messages, the first comment in that is me giving a link to a newbie post that has a bunch of links in it. The current Discord invite can be found there. If you can't find it, send me a message on Facebook. I'll give you the Discord. All right. Whoop. Are y'all back from the ad? Rose, you're here. Welcome. Oh, Ali, I'm sorry. So I guess my issue is I planned on it ending on a cliffhanger. I'm just so sad that I'll have to change that. You will have to change that and one of the things I said earlier is if it's a cliffhanger, like if it's just like subplots for the first book that are not tied up that you're then going to use for the remaining series, that's okay. But your first book has a story question. And this is going to be redundant for y'all who have been here the whole time. But it has a story question. And that question has to be answered in a satisfying way by the time you get to the end of the book. If it isn't, if you just leave it as a cliffhanger, hoping that they're going to go to your next book, they're not going to go to your next book. I cannot tell you how annoyed I am. And I will literally not, there are very few books that are good enough for me to get over the annoyance of having paid for this book and not having a whole story. It has to have a whole story. So yeah. All right. So hopefully, does that make sense? I also, Ali, answered the question about the cliffhanger too. So definitely go back and rewatch. It was probably about 40 minutes in, probably, when I started picking them up. So let's see. Let GKST. I don't know what to. I don't know. Like, can I just call you Let? Says wrap the story in one book with a chance to a second book. CJ said yes. Yeah, because the thing is, if people are not buying your first book, the publisher isn't going to want to publish a second book. If they are buying your first book, if you do well with that first book, they are going to offer you a great big old contract. Although a lot of times, again, now is a little different than it was a while back, because I'm finding publishers are more willing to offer a 3-book contract, trilogy, whatever. But that first book still needs to be satisfying on its own, because if it's not, your readers are not going to go on. So because I'm not going to be willing to pay 3 books worth of money just to get one story. I want 3 stories and then one big overarching series plot. So yeah. You're so salty right now. You're salty because you were salty because of the ads. I have an emote for that. I will give you a salty emote in Twitch just for your saltiness about the ads. So there we go. That's salt. So, all right. Huzzah. All right. Nick, hopefully you got what I said about the Discord. I have to keep reloading the YouTube chat because it keeps not wanting to actually refresh properly. So yeah, all right. Is that it? No more questions? I mean, I'll stay as long as y'all want. So, any other questions? Questions? Let's see, what other things? Oh, there was a question. Wait, there was a question I missed. Because I remember seeing it, but I was talking about something. It was about there it is. It was omniscience. What are some green flags to look for in an editor, and what are some red flags? Most of us indies tend to be like, oh, they say they're an editor, I'll hire them. And Karina responded with, it has, oh no, that was something else. That was something else she was responding to. Okay, so yes, it is, as someone who is a professional editor and has been for a long time, I'm not going to lie, and I'm going to say that there are a number of editors who think that because they like to read, that makes them an editor. Or authors who have been on the receiving end of edits, who think that qualifies them to be an editor. It doesn't not qualify them, right? And I don't hold any animosity towards them, but yeah, as an author looking for an editor, it's most important that your editor is familiar with your genre, preferably reads in it. But at the very least, they have to understand reader expectations for your genre. Because if they don't, then the advice that they're going to give you is not going to be good. This is why I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the stream that I don't edit military science fiction. I don't edit any hard science fiction at all. And that's because I don't read in it, ever. And I don't know the reader expectations, and I don't know, what sorts of things those readers like. So I'm never going to edit those stories because I'm not going to do a good job, right? So your editor needs to be needs to, have an understanding of your genre. If your editor says that they can edit any genre at all, like ever, they're probably not going to be an editor that's going to be very good, I think, because it's a very rare person, I think, that reads every single genre that's out there, So, at any rate, so you want that. I'll tell you the way I do it. When someone reaches out to engage me for an edit, I'm just gonna kind of want to know, what's your goal? What's your plans? What are you doing this for? And that's not really to judge whether I want to work with them. I mean, in some cases it is, but mostly I just want to I want to see where they are, what they know, how long they've been doing this, what their goals are, that kind of thing. I just want to get a general idea of the path that they're looking to create for themselves. And then I will, I'll want to know a little bit about the story. What genre is it? How long is it? Because if they tell me that they've got a young adult sweet romance, which is not my favorite thing, I'll edit it because I can edit it. I can edit that because I've edited romance a bajillion times, but it's not my favorite. So if they say that and then they say it's like 130,000 words, no, you got to cut that in half. That's way too long, right? So like, I want an idea of what it is. I want an idea of whether they've worked with an editor before and, that kind of thing. So, and then I will ask for usually 10 to 20 pages, somewhere in the middle. I'll just give them a range. I'll say I want page 105 through 120 or something, right? And I just want them to send me that. And what that's going to do is give me an idea. And then I'll offer to them, I'll say, I will pick 3 pages, consecutive pages, not just individual pages, 3 to 5 pages within that. And I will send you edits for those so that you get an idea of how I edit. Because I'm a fucking hard editor. And not everybody, that doesn't work for everyone. Some people need a much more gentle hand, which is fine. I'm not mean, but I am definitely a hard editor, right? And that doesn't work for everybody. So they'll give me a sample, I'll give them a sample, and then we'll decide, right? So like for me, I feel like that is the best way to go about it, right? Because I need the sample, because I need to know what to charge them. Because I charge by the page. Some editors charge by the word, some editors charge by time, like they actually take their time. I am way too forgetful to be able to charge by time because I'll forget to turn the timer on. I'll be like, oh, or I'll work on something for like 20 minutes. I'll go off and do something for a half an hour and I'll come back and I'll work on it. And there's no way I'm going to remember to time that. So I just flat rate by the page. But reading something from the middle of their book is going to give me a very good idea of where they are, like what their level is. So anyway, so that's how it works for me. Green lights. It's always good to know, like, be able to get references for who they've worked with before. For me as a writer, if I were going to engage an editor, I would be interested in knowing what they've edited in the past, but at the same time, I would probably rely more on their editorial sample to me. I would ask for 3 or 5 pages to be edited and see what that looks like. Because a huge part of this is the relationship, because we have the same goal, and that is to make your manuscript as good as we can in the time we have, right? So for me, it's not antagonistic at all. We are a team. I'm going to give you my best feedback, my best suggestions, my best, problem solving for issues and stuff. Whether you choose to take those things are entirely up to you, because it's your freaking book and it's going to be your name on the spine, not mine. So what you do with that is what you do with it. So green lights for me also is, how well do I get along with this person just in talking to them, right? Are they willing to, if as an author, are they willing to get on a 15-minute Zoom call with me just to talk? And it's not to say if they say no, they don't want to do that. That's not to say that there's anything wrong with them. But I'm going to be able to get a better assessment for whether we'll get along if I can talk to them for 15 minutes. Because that's how I work. That's how I work, So anyway, red flags. Red flags, I would say, if they're not willing to talk to you about other clients or give you other clients' names that you can, follow, or book names or whatever that they've done, if they're not willing to do that. If it feels like they're being disingenuous in any way or trying to hedge or trying not to be honest about stuff, that's obviously always going to be a red flag. If they've never edited anything in my genre before, that's going to be a red flag. And again, these don't mean that they're necessarily bad at what they do. It just means that they're not going to be a good fit for me, most likely. So, okay, hopefully that helps. Let says, I have an issue. I write mostly juvenile with LGBT themes, but the publishers in my country, good ones, are way too expensive. Publishers shouldn't, you should never have to pay a publisher. Indie publishers don't get enough reach, and more serious editors, I'm afraid they wouldn't be interested in my stuff. Like, I don't fit in anywhere. There are a lot of serious editors who actually really like working with authors who write LGBTQ stuff. There are tons of them. You don't have to have someone in your country do your editing, because that also depends on where you're wanting to release it. If you're releasing it in English language markets and you're releasing it in the US, then having a US editor is a great idea. So let's see. Karina says, Juvie LGBTQ is a popular genre. You certainly have a marketplace waiting for your book. Absolutely. I agree 100%. The thing is, Let says, the thing is, I'm afraid my work will not have the impact I want, but yeah, I need to do more research. Okay, here's the thing. You're never going to know the impact your work has unless someone tells you. You're never going to know. So my best advice along those lines is not to worry about that. Write the best book you can to do the thing you want it to do. Put your heart into it, get it out there, because I can guarantee you there will be people that it impacts them the way you want it to impact them. There are going to be other people who don't. That's okay. It's okay. Just keep going. Just keep going. Don't let that fear stop you. Because let me tell you something. I'm 50. How old am I now? It's 2023. I'm 54. I have to math. I have to actively math to figure out my age, because 2 different years I thought I was a year older than I was. So I have to actually math to figure out how old I am. So I'm 54. I did not go back to writing seriously until I was in my 30s. If I had done this from the beginning, I would be in such better, like I would be so much further along. Do not let it be, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. You have nothing to lose. Nothing. And you will help people that you don't know you help. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. So, all right. Anita says, if you're hunting for editors outside your country, though, you have to factor in exchange rate for budgeting. Absolutely true. 100%. Yes, I agree. And I don't know. I mean, it's also so much depends. Fucking ads. All right. So now I'm just talking to the YouTube folks. So hopefully Nick is still out there. So y'all let me know when the ads are done on Twitch. I'm going to take a drink. So shouldn't be too much longer, hopefully. And I hope that helped. All right, y'all should be coming back anytime now. Anytime. Poor YouTube people. They're like, you could still be talking. All right, are the ads over? Oh yeah, Rose, you have a subscription, so yes, you're still listening. Yes, yay. So yes, so that just is incentive to subscribe. So if you're on Twitch and you also have an Amazon Prime account, you can subscribe to one channel for free every month. So if you'd like to use that on mine, please feel free. So, ooh, what are you fixing to eat, Rose? Let's see. Nick says, no real questions coming to mind. I'm just lurking. That's okay. At least I know somebody's still out there. So, all right. I hope that that helped. And okay, ad is over. Thank goodness. I don't know. Did y'all hear me say not to be afraid? Did you get my whole spiel about not being afraid? Because I feel like I did it really well, and I'm going to be really disappointed if that was covered by the ads. So somebody let me know if my don't be afraid thing. Okay, good. Oh, Faye is here. Hi, Faye. Good to see you. Okay, I'm glad y'all got it. Because honestly, I try to live my life without regrets, but I will say that is something I regret. I regret not, because when I was 14, I knew I wanted to be a writer. And I told my mom I wanted to be a writer. And she said, that's a very competitive field, which is true. But little 14-year-old Vanessa's brain tacked on to the end of that, so you couldn't possibly succeed, right? So it scared me. And so I didn't do anything with my writing at all until I was in my 30s. So don't be me, don't be me. Do your thing. Put your stuff out there. The world needs your shit. So do it. All right. Okay, any other questions? Questions, comments, thoughts? Anybody need clarification on anything? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I really want to tackle. Don't forget, if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to follow and subscribe. If you're here on, follow and subscribe. Thumbs up and subscribe. That's what I meant. Thumbs up and subscribe. If you're here on Twitch, feel free to give me a follow if you enjoyed this. I mostly do writing sprints. We're doing the Ask Me Anything because we did a community challenge, and all of my awesome Twitch followers came through, so maybe we'll do this like quarterly. Rose says, if you already covered this, I can just watch the VOD, but do you have any insight on like self-publishing wide versus only Amazon? Yes, that does make sense. So that's a good question. All right, so to explain for anybody who doesn't know, when you publish with KDP, which is Amazon, you have the option, and I mentioned this earlier briefly, you have the option of being part of the KDP Select, which will put your book into Kindle Unlimited. And with Kindle Unlimited, you get paid by the page read rather than by like ebook. It ends up shaking out to be close to what you would make if they just bought the ebook outright. 95% probably, 90 to 95%, as far as how much money you make off of it. But the thing that you give up by being part of KDP Select is that you cannot distribute your ebook, just your ebook, not your paperback. Excuse me, just your ebook anywhere else. You can't even give it away for free yourself. There's a way around, it's not a way around that. You're still playing by the rules. There is a way to give things away for free and still utilize Amazon, but again, it's a workaround, still keeps you within the rules, right? So there's a way to do that, but it's a pain in the ass. All right, so that's what Rose is talking about as far as only Amazon, right? And the other option, if you don't do KDP Select, is the ability to go wide. And what that means is that your ebook also shows up in Barnes & Noble, on Kobo, Smashwords, all the other places. You can sell it on your website, like all the other anywhere else you want to go. So that is going wide. So the question always is, should you go wide or should you do Amazon only? Well, there's an argument for both. So Karina says, go wide. And I don't disagree. So I think that you have to make that decision for each book. This isn't something that is your only, it's not your career. It is each individual book you have to decide. Do you want it exclusive to Amazon, or do you want to go wide with it? Each book, each series, that kind of thing. So for me, my books are currently still all Amazon only. And I had planned to start going wide earlier this year, but that didn't work out because of personal stuff. I haven't had the spoons to deal with it, so it's still all in Kindle Unlimited. So there's an argument to be made for starting, like, okay, so you can do Kindle Unlimited, KDP Select, for 3 months at a time, and it'll auto renew itself unless you tell it not to, and then at the end of your 3 months you'll drop out of it, and then you can go wide at any point after that. So it's not like, once you sign up for for KDP Select that you can never get out of it. No, it's every 3 months, right? So there are some authors who, when their book first comes out, it's in Kindle Unlimited for the first 3 months, and then they go wide. For others, it's longer. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe it's a year. For some people, they keep everything in KDP Select so that they can get their Kindle Unlimited, because there are certain readers who, like, there are readers who have their Kindle Unlimited subscription and they plow through 30 books in a month, right? So they are the kind of readers that you want reading your books, because they're going to read very quickly. They're going to read widely. Once they find an author they like, they read all their stuff, especially if all their stuff is in Kindle Unlimited, right? So it's a good way to get your name out there, to start building up your readership, especially if, like, for that book, but also if you're early in your career. I do agree, though, with Karina's go wide, because putting all your eggs in one basket is always asking for trouble. I mean, I say that, and I am still in Kindle Unlimited. I am still in KDP Select. All my eggs are in one basket. It makes me uncomfortable, but that's where I am right now, because I just don't have the energy to deal with it. But the thing about it is it's not a set in stone decision. You can decide to do Amazon exclusively for 6 months. See how it goes. If you're not getting read through on Kindle Unlimited, if you're not doing ads or getting newsletter swaps or whatever to get your name out there so that people will then get your book out of put your book in their queue on Kindle Unlimited. If you're not getting the reads, then there's no sense in it being in there, right? If you're not getting the reads, it doesn't make any sense to be in there. So pull it out. See if you do better wide. You can go back and forth. It's never set in stone. You do not have to just do the one thing always. And you may have a situation where, some of your books do really well in Kindle Unlimited once you have a bigger catalog. Some of your books may do really well in Kindle Unlimited and others don't. And so some of yours are in and some of yours are out. And probably that's probably the ideal way to do it, because you keep some of the books in Kindle Unlimited, so you're getting more readers through Kindle Unlimited who then find your other books that are not in Kindle Unlimited. So then they'll buy those ebooks, ideally, right? So, you can use it as the tool that it is, rather than doing it because you think it's the only option. So, Anita says, KU has lost its shine recently. Several bigger name indies have pulled out. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that. I mean, I'm not up on everything right now. So, why did they pull out? Are they not making the money? I know that there's been, during the lockdown, KU, reads were off the charts. But of course, everybody was sitting at home doing nothing. So, everything, all kind of online entertainment has kind of dropped since lockdown ended, right? So what's hilarious is it's like they're surprised. Like Netflix is like, oh, we weren't, our sales didn't increase, or our profit didn't increase at the rate it's been increasing for the last couple of years. Well, no, duh. It's just like, yeah, that's not a surprise. People are going out and living their lives again. So, anyway. So I'm interested to know. I'm interested in why the big name indies have pulled out. Payouts have dropped. Yes. Plus, Amazon penalized several KU authors for pirated books, meaning their books were being. Okay. I know what you're talking about now. So what happened was some whoever pirated these people's books, and these books are on pirate site. And I'm gonna tell y'all, do not try to play whack-a-mole with that shit. You can spend your entire day sending copyright notices, DMCA notices to pirate sites to take your books down, but you will spend all day, every day doing that, and you will never get any writing done. Do not bother with the whack-a-mole, because they're going to do what they're going to do. And the people who are downloading your books for free are not your readers. They're not the ones who would pay for your book anyway. So what happened was they had their books were pirated. KDP Select says you cannot distribute your book anywhere on the internet except for Amazon. So they kicked a bunch of authors out of Amazon because their books were being pirated. And like the idea that authors like the big traditional publishers cannot keep pirates from pirating the books. The big movie, like Netflix, cannot keep the pirates from pirating their shows. Like, if they can't do it, indie authors can't do it either. So it was really, I remember when that happened. And Amazon ended up reversing. Like, they ended up being like, oh no, you're right, sorry. But I have a love-hate relationship with Amazon, because Amazon, yes, they have done stuff that completely revolutionized publishing, honestly. Like, we would not be where we are without Amazon having started us on this path. Absolutely. I'm grateful for that. But Amazon is also incredibly predatory towards authors and always has been. So, yeah. Anyway, love-hate with Amazon. All right. Rose said she didn't realize KDP Select was so flexible. Yes, Karina says, don't waste your time fighting pirate sites. Rose says that's stupid, which I know was a response to Amazon's reaction to the things being pirated. Yeah, that was a big mess. But like, it's so funny because like when that happened, I read about it and it's just like, that is so stupid. I am not even remotely surprised that Amazon did that. Like, I don't think anybody was surprised. Like, everybody was like, oh, I cannot believe they're doing that. But we all couldn't believe. We all believe that they're doing that. So Karina says, controversial subject. As an editor, how do you feel about authors being forced to change the plot or their writing to become more politically correct? I don't like the term politically correct, just to put it out there, because it is often used to downplay problematic stuff. So I think that authors being forced to change the plot or their writing. No, you don't have to apologize. I understand what you meant. I was just stating that for my personal thing. Karina said I didn't know how to explain it. So changing things because there might be problematic pieces. I think that it depends on, it's so context related. Because, all right. Okay, so I'm going to talk about sexual assault here for a second. There are a number of people there are a lot of people who have been sexually assaulted. Some have been raped. Some have been, maybe not quite that extent, but have had sexual assault in their background. I mean, most female presenting people have at some point. Sexual assault or sexual harassment, right? So there is having rape in a book can be problematic, like in a lot of different ways, right? Sometimes it's necessary to have it on the screen in the book, like on the page. Sometimes it's necessary. It's not usually necessary, though. Not usually. If there's something that happens specifically, it's really hard. Like, it's hard for me to think about a justification where that sort of thing has to actually actively be on the page. It doesn't. Sure, shock value, sure. But if that's the only reason that it's on the page is for the shock value, then that's a problem, you know? So I think that authors shouldn't... Okay, nobody's going to force an author to change their story unless they're being traditionally published. So I generally don't think that an author should be forced to change something unless the publisher knows that it's going to be a problem because it has been a problem in the past or whatever. Or if it does not align with their values as a corporation or a company or whatever, you know. But they should know that before they offer, like they should already know that before they offered the contract. So if you offered the contract, but then you want to change a major part of the story, then that's a problem, right? So Amazon is already censoring books. Well, I don't know. What do you mean by censoring books? Certainly, like, there are some things that I would not want to read. And, you know, it's so hard because it is entirely subjective on multiple levels, right? It's subjective for readers, it's subjective for authors, but it's also subjective for publishers, right? It's what they are willing to align to, you know? Like if I were a publisher, I can guarantee you that I would never accept a manuscript where fridging was a thing. So for those of you who don't know what fridging is, it means that a woman or a female presenting person is hurt or killed, usually raped or killed, in order to jumpstart the plot for the male protagonist. That would be a thing I would never accept if I had a publishing house. We would never ever publish a book with that in it. Is it because it's offensive? Sure. Is it because it's like, I don't like it. So I get to say, I don't want to publish that, right? So it's hard to answer that. I think sometimes authors absolutely need to be forced to change something because it does not feed into it does not serve the story. It does not, and it not only doesn't serve the story, but it is just for the flash, just for the shock, just for the gimmick. That's a problem. Karina says, it is hard, but we should be able to write with freedom. Not everyone is going to enjoy what you write. But you come from it from an innocent perspective too, right? There are people who write these things for a reason, right? For a reason. They're not doing it because it serves the story. They're doing it as a message, you know, or they're doing it, you know, not... it has to be case by case. It has to be, you know? Okay, so we have another ad. So Nick is giving me a relevant trope link, but the link hasn't come through. So I'm not sure if YouTube is blocking the links. YouTube might be blocking the links. In which case you'll have to, you know, type it out in a fiddly way or whatever. All right, y'all, let me know when the ads are done. I'm going to take another drink. So those of you who are on YouTube who can still hear me, and those of you who are subscribing who can still hear me, I don't really have anything else. That was it. We're probably going to wrap up here in about 15 minutes. So, yeah. So if anybody has any other questions... I'm suddenly very warm. I've had my light on this whole time. I'm back! All right, I was just saying I'm probably going to wrap this up in about 15 minutes. So if folks have any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm refreshing the Facebook event to see if anybody's added any questions there. I don't think anybody has. All right. Nobody has. So if anybody has any further questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I feel like I want to cover. Query. We talked a little bit about querying books. What's a ballpark cost for Indie Pub? I realize that it will vary by author and project. It will. It absolutely will. Okay, so let's just say you have an average size book, 80,000 words, between 80 and 100,000 words. Your cover is going to cost you assuming that you're like, farming out stuff. Cover's going to cost you anywhere from $100 to $300 for a good one. You can find it cheaper, which is awesome. But you want to look for a cover artist, the same things that you look for in an editor, you want to look for in a cover artist. They need to understand the genre that you write in and what the expectation is of those covers. And they need to be able to do it, right? So, and you may get a cover designer, and you may then also have a person who does the typesetting. So like the different fonts and stuff. So, you could have both of those things. So it can go anywhere from 100 up to even 1,000. I usually 300 is probably about what I have. Hang on, somebody just sent me a message on Facebook. Okay, sorry, that's a thing I can answer later. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't anything about this. So, okay, 100, 300 for a cover. Editing, average is probably going to be, if you're getting a professional level editor, it's probably going to be at least $1,000. If you can't afford that and you want to go with a less expensive editor, that's fine. You also have things like the New Author Consult that I mentioned earlier. You could probably use that as your guide, something like that as your guide to actually doing edits, and then maybe just get a proofreader or something. You could do that. So I probably wouldn't recommend an editor that's only going to charge you like $300 for an 80,000 word book, because you're going to get what you pay for, basically. So, all right. So yeah, Anita mentions for covers, there's some good, preset sites out there too, if you need to cut costs for covers. Yeah. Those still usually range about $100 though. So, the pre-made ones, you can basically, you then just tell them, your author name and your title, and like if you have like a little tagline or whatever that goes on it, and then they just change that and you just get the standard pre-made cover. But what you want to check is to make sure that once you purchase the pre-made, it is not sold again, because obviously you don't want a whole bunch of books having, your same cover. Anita also mentions that they often have sales on those sites, and that's true. So, it might be worthwhile to buy a bunch of covers. And often when you're engaging a cover artist, if you know that you're writing a series and you can buy, multiple covers at the same time, you'll often get a discount. So yeah. Okay. So that's that formatting. I don't know what formatting runs because I make my husband do it. So I don't know, $150, $100, probably. That's probably about it. D&D just took selfpublishedcovers.com. D&D, you mean D2D? Do you mean draft to digital? There's also getcovers.com, which is a Ukrainian company, and they do really good work, my understanding. So, okay, so covers, formatting, that's really all you need. Covers, formatting. So keep in mind, covers though, you usually have to pay extra for the paperback cover. If you're going to do a hardback edition, you're going to pay extra for that too, because those are all different formats. And often so Amazon paperback and Ingram Spark paperback are not the same dimensions. Even if you're getting the exact same size book, it's different. And it has a lot to do with the quality of the paper that they use and the thickness of the paper that they use. So like, it's going to be different. So you've got different templates. So I have to pay my cover artist $30 each. I think it's $75 for the first paperback version, and then $30 for like the Ingram, for the Amazon and the Ingram, or vice versa. So yeah. So like having multiple versions is going to cost you more, and you're going to want the audiobook cover, which of course is square, not, rectangular. So that's a whole different cover too. So yeah. So you've got to keep that in mind, even if you're paying $200 for the ebook cover. You need to factor in what these other versions of the cover are also going to cost you, and it could be a total of $500. If it could be, it's going to be more. But I think those are the main things, not counting any marketing money. But I think those are the main costs. So much of it depends also on what you bring to the table, because if you have a background in art or digital design or anything like that, maybe you can make your own covers. I have background in editing, obviously, so I don't pay a developmental editor. I don't need a developmental editor in most cases. I'll pay either a copy editor or a proofer. So, and of course I also have like people who critique, like beta readers and stuff like that, but I don't pay them. So Anita says that's why I do my own covers. Yeah. So, and there are actually quite a number of different services that have cover creation sort of options. Like I know Canva has one, and BookBrush also has a cover maker. So yeah. So that's the thing to look at. So I think I covered, can anybody think of anything else that you might put money out? Now, if you're writing, obviously if you're doing something like a kid's book or whatever, you may have an illustrator or something like that. But indie publishing kids books like that isn't generally going to be as good, as lucrative, as if you had that traditionally published. So, all right. Any other questions? Thoughts? Did I get everything? Oh, Nick says, I'm not remotely to this point, but what can be negotiated in a book contract as far as layout, presentation, cover, anything? All right, I'm assuming that you're talking about traditional publishing, right? So here's the thing. Especially as a newer author, you're not going to have very much pull. You're not going to have much leverage. You can always ask for whatever you want. If you have an agent, they're going to be your best bet. So you have you have pretty much no real say over the layout or the presentation, generally speaking. I mean, if you have things that you want to add, like maybe you want to, your acknowledgments to be in the front instead of the back, or you want, whatever, like you may be able to ask for those things. Your cover, you're going to have very little input on. If you're talking about the big publishers, smaller publishers, you'll probably have a little bit more input on. You'll at least get a copy. I mean, you'll get the copy of the cover. Like they'll send you any of them. They'll send you the cover. And with smaller presses, you can usually give some feedback and be like, hey, oh, good night, Karina. Thank you for joining me. You can give input. And often with smaller publishers, they'll take your input and, try to improve the cover. That was my experience when I published some smut under a pen name. I had it published through a mid-size, non-traditional, it's traditional in format, but anyway, ebook publisher. And the first cover they gave me, So in this book, it was the main character is a bigger girl, and there's rope involved. And, you know, I described like what I really would love to see. And what I got was this skinny little woman who was sitting on like a bar chair, like backwards, and, you know, facing the camera, you know, legs spread, you know, like, you know, just like you're straddling a chair. And then this gigantic, like, ship, like rope you would use on a sailing ship, like, you know, just kind of laying at her feet. And I'm like, first of all, let me just tell you, the woman's too little and the rope is too big. And then they talked to the cover artist and he got me something else that was actually perfect. So that was my experience with a smaller publisher. With a big publisher, like the New York publishers, if you get any say at all, especially as a newer author, count yourself lucky, because you're not going to get much input. So yeah. And, you know, you can give where they're really going to want to hear from you is marketing. They're going to want to know if you have a marketing plan already, or what kinds of marketing things you've done or you're comfortable doing, or things you might want to do. So you're probably going to get more input on that than you will anything else. So, because of course you're going to have to do most of the work. So Faye says your ISBN number. What was that in reference to, Faye? So Nick, does that answer your question? Hopefully you can ask for anything you want. Like you can negotiate, you can, you know, sit down and try to negotiate any point in your contract at all. It's really going to come down to what they're willing to do, you know. Boilerplate contracts you should negotiate, because they are always written in favor of the publisher. So you have to make sure that the things you need out of that contract are in that contract. Nobody else is responsible for that. Excuse me, just you. So, yeah, but you're always you can always talk about what you want, whether they're going to be willing to give it. Pricing out your, oh yeah, okay, excellent. Thank you, Faye. Yes, excellent point. So if you're doing indie publishing, you are going to need ISBNs. Those are the number on the back of the book, the ISBNs. See, there's my right there at the top. You probably can't actually see the numbers, but it says right there, ISBNs and the number, right? So if you live in Canada, you're super lucky because you get free ISBNs. Lucky you. In the US, because you can't get any fucking thing free here. Except for COVID, you've got to pay for them. And I would recommend buying them in bulk, at least 10. That's you can buy one, but one is going to cost you $125. But if you buy 10, you pay, what is it? 10 for 3, like $295 or something. And then you can get 1,000 for like $600. I mean, 100 for like $600. So, you know, it's a racket. It's totally a racket. But you're going to need ISBNs, because you need one for your paperback. If you do a large print, you'll need one for that. You'll need one for your audiobook. If you do a hardcover, you'll need one for that. You don't have to have one for an ebook. An ebook doesn't require an ISBN. I do ISBNs for all my ebooks anyway, just because I want to. So, so if you do that, if you do an ebook and you choose to use ISBNs for an ebook, paperback, you only need one for the paperback. You don't, like if you're doing it at Amazon and at Ingram Spark and at Draft to Digital, you just need the one. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to address that too, Anita. Ingram Spark also offers a free one. So Anita says, technically you don't need an ISBN unless you're using Ingram Spark. Amazon and Draft to Digital will provide them, but the ISBN belongs to those companies. Exactly. Ingram also offers an ISBN, if I remember correctly. But the problem is that means if you are, okay, there is Amazon, and Amazon has extended distribution. So they can sell to bookstores, they can sell to Walmart, they can sell to whoever. They're not going to sell to those places unless those places are asking for your book. And no bookstores are going to order their books from Amazon because Amazon is putting them out of business. So they're not going to do that. So you put it up on Amazon, so you put it up on Amazon and you put it up on Ingram Spark, right? Because Amazon doesn't play well with others. So you want their distribution of your paperback to come from Amazon. Because if you want the distribution on Amazon to come from Ingram Spark, you're going to have problems with Amazon because they don't play well with people. So if you want your book, your paperback up on Amazon and Ingram Spark, if you don't want to have to keep track of 2 different ISBNs for the same freaking book, just buy your own damn ISBNs. I'm also a bit of a control freak. I want the ISBN to be my ISBN, not theirs. I know that might have been confusing if you don't have any background in that. Oh yes, Anita makes a very good point. Do not use Amazon Global Distribution. KDP Print is only good for Amazon. Yes, do not ever use Amazon Global Distribution. If you want global distribution, upload to Ingram or Draft to Digital. But yeah, do not use Amazon because you can't get it away from them. It becomes a huge headache if you want to make any change because Amazon does not play well with others. That's the whole thing. That's it. That's all of it. So Amazon does not play well with others. So, all right. It is now 10 o'clock my time. We've been doing this for 2 hours. Okay, last questions? Any last questions? I want to thank y'all for being here. Maybe we'll do this I'll do this maybe quarterly or something, or twice a year or something like that. This was kind of fun. I enjoyed it. All right. If there are no other questions, Draft to Digital is a bit iffy too with the print distribution. Yeah, they're still new on print. They're still working on it. So, yeah, I agree with you. I do all my paperbacks. I upload them to Amazon and I upload them to Ingram Spark, and I do extended distribution, or not extend. I do distribution to everyone except Amazon with Ingram Spark. So, all right, that's it. Thanks everybody. I hope you got what you needed out of this. We'll do it again at some point later in the year. So thank you as always. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your night or day or whatever it is where you are. And don't forget, we're not doing writing sprints on Twitch this week because I'm going to be out of town, but I will be back next Wednesday at the usual time of noon Eastern. All right, bye y'all. Ciao.